Formidable Cold War carrier aircraft. 10. Douglas A-1 Skyraider. Another design that entered service too late for the war it was intended for, the Douglas Skyraider was a single-seat piston-engined aircraft that shot down MiGs. There, the similarity with the Sea Fury ends, as the A-1 was designed as a dive torpedo bomber rather than a fighter. Intended to replace the Avenger and the Dauntless, the XBT-2D-1 Destroyer II first flew in March of 1945. By April, the U.S. Navy had placed an order for 548 and changed the name to the AD-1 Skyraider. The success was partly due to Ed Heinemann's design team's obsession with weight reduction and simplicity. In total, the team saved 1,800 pounds, or 818 kilograms, enabling the Skyraider to carry 8,000 pounds, or 3,636 kilograms of weaponry. And in something of a worrying trend for the U.S. Navy, this included plans for one-way trips with a nuclear weapon. Thanks to its promise and relatively low cost, orders for the AD-1 were not cut back at the end of the Second World War, and the first squadron was formed in December 1946. With the invasion of South Korea, Skyraiders were soon in action, conducting ground attack and mine-laying operations. Remaining in service until 1968, AD-1s were also active in Vietnam, where, as well as attack, close air support, and rescue missions, they shot down 2 MiG-17 jets. The Skyraider's only other naval user was Britain's Royal Navy, which operated it in the airborne early warning role. 9. Douglas A-4 Skyhawk. Following the success of the Skyraider, Ed Heinemann's team produced a proposal for its successor. The U.S. Navy specified an aircraft of no more than 30,000 pounds, or 13,636 kilograms, to meet their range criteria for carrying a 2,000-pound special bomb, i.e. nuclear. Laughing in the face of such limitations, the Douglas design was half the weight while still meeting the requirements. The special bomb requirement leading to the characteristic stocky undercarriage. One of the weight-saving measures was restricting the wingspan to 27 feet, or 8.2 meters, enabling them to fit down carrier lifts without folding, removing the need for hydraulic actuators, and allowing 2,000 liters of fuel to be carried in each wing. The first operational squadron formed in 1956, and 2 years later the Skyhawk was in action over Lebanon. This and subsequent action in Southeast Asia led to improvements to the A-4's conventional weapons capabilities, which expanded to carry a wide range of unguided and guided weaponry. At the same time, the maximum payload increased from 5,500 pounds, or 2,500 kilograms, in the A-4A to 9,195 pounds, or 4,180 kilograms, in the A-4M. The Skyhawk was a classic of Cold War naval aviation, proving its capability, and perhaps uniquely for this list, a new operator took it to sea almost a decade after the fall of the Berlin Wall. The Brazilian Navy taking delivery of 23 ex-Kuwait Air Force A-4KUs in 1998, and by 2001 these were operating from the carrier Minas Gerais. 8. Vought F-8 Crusader. Although powered by a Pratt & Whitney J-57 like the F-100 Super Sabre, the Crusader could fly further, faster, and higher while carrying more. To assist in getting the supersonic fighter on board, Vought used a variable incidence wing. This allowed the pilot to maintain sight of the ship while flying slow enough to land safely. The Crusader was active during the Vietnam War, scoring 19 air-to-air victories for 3 losses, the best ratio of any U.S. aircraft of the conflict. Armed with 4 20mm cannon, it has frequently been called the last of the gunfighters, though it had many problems with its guns. To provide the Essex-class carriers with an all-weather fighter from the F-8C onwards, a new Magnavox radar was introduced with a larger dish, allowing it to operate the AIM-9C, the only version of the Sidewinder missile to be radar-guided, giving it a head-on capability the heat-seeking version wouldn't get until the AIM-L in 1977. Entering service in 1956, the Crusader served with the U.S. Navy as a fighter for 20 years and was retired by the French Navy in 1999 after 35 years of service. Various radically improved versions were considered, notably the incredible Vought F-8 Crusader III. 7. McDonnell Douglas F-18 Hornet. The F-18 Hornet ushered in a new generation of ultra-agile, glass-cockpitted, multi-role fighters. We spoke to former U.S. Marine Corps pilot Louis Gundlach about flying and fighting in the Hornet. The Hornet was sleek and new and did not have all the blisters and bumps that the older jets had. Obviously, I've been biased about the Hornet for a long time, and I still am. It is still a cool-looking jet. The takeoff was amazing, especially to someone who had only flown a Cessna 172 to that point. When you add power to the Hornet and hold the brakes to do a quick pre-takeoff checklist, the jet will squat slightly on the front nose wheel. The Hornet was fun to fly. I often said that I couldn't believe they paid me to do this. Every flight was a blast. It was reliable. It always got me home. A few times single-engined, but it was always reliable. It was also accurate. A lot of people focus on air-to-air, but the Hornet was a fantastic bomber. The Hornet was reliable. The systems, for the most part, were almost always working. The Marines working on the aircraft did a tremendous job keeping the Hornets flying and the systems working, often at austere locations. This is a testament to the Marines who tirelessly worked on the jets and the reliability of the Hornet itself. 6. McDonnell Douglas F-4 Phantom II. First flying in 1958, the F-4 was one of the first carrier aircraft to have an automatic landing capability, first trialed on 112 converted F-4Bs. They had been fitted with a system allowing them to be controlled by AWACS or surface ships to conduct interceptions, resulting in a change of designation to F-4G, a decade before the USF F-4G. In July 1959, the Royal Navy formed its first Sea Vixen Squadron, an all-weather two-seat, twin-engine carrier fighter that could just about break the sound barrier downhill. Unsportingly, 18 months later, the USN formed its first F-4 Phantom Squadron, which could go twice as fast, carry twice as many air-to-air missiles, and haul a selection of air-to-ground weaponry. Like the Intruder, the Phantom saw its combat debut in Vietnam, where it operated in the fighter and bomber roles. Unlike the Intruder, it would also see service with the Royal Navy in a modified form, the J-79 turbojets being replaced with Spey fanfets. Famously, increasing the available thrust, this reduced the top speed by around 0.2 Mach due to the drag from the larger intakes. The Phantom remained in frontline service for the U.S. Navy until October 18, 1986, when the type made its last carrier landing almost precisely 25 years after the first frontline squadron became carrier qualified. This period was the peak of the Cold War, and throughout, the F-4 proved a carrier aircraft that could equal the best of any Air Force, if only because most of them ended up buying it. 5. BAE Sea Harrier. The Sea Harrier was a tiny, slow, and lightly armed curiosity at the time it entered service in 1978. But when it pitted against the mighty, no-compromise F-15 Eagle, the most respected combat aircraft in the world, it delivered an unexpected shock. We spoke to Commander Sharkey Ward, who successfully took the Sea Harrier to war in 1982 to find out more. In late 1979, the Sea Harrier was the new boy on the block, and fighter pilots everywhere were keen to know how capable it was going to be in combat. This led to the USF F-5E Aggressor Squadron in Alconbury inviting my trials unit to visit them for an air combat program of mutual learning and evaluation. The results of the detachment spread rapidly through the fighter world. The results recorded 26 kills for and just 10 against. In very quick time, the boss of the fabled F-15 Eagle Squadron in Bitburg, Germany, called me up and asked to come and visit us with two of his superb aircraft for more fighter combat evaluation. Against the F-15, Ian Mortimer and I recorded 7 kills for and just 1 against. Detractors might have called this a flash in the pan, but they would be wrong. Our little Sea Harrier jump jet more than held its own against these two superb fighter aircraft in a later exercise, which could fly faster and turn much tighter. To the uninitiated, this should have meant a one-sided contest that we would always lose, but not so. 4. Blackburn Buccaneer. Having a relatively peaceful time in Royal Navy carrier service, the Buccaneer's major actions were helping enforce the Beira Patrol in support of sanctions against Rhodesia, bombing the stricken tanker Torrey Canyon off Land's End to burn off the crude oil, and launching from HMS Ark Royal in mid-Atlantic to conduct a show of force over Belize to deter a Guatemalan invasion. Designed for aircraft carrier use, the Buccaneer also spent time as a land-based attack aircraft with the RAF. According to former Buccaneer navigator Mike Loosely, it could fly very low. It's true that it gave a very smooth ride at high speed and low level, but the crew's skill, training, and attitude were just as crucial as the airframe. But not everything was great about the Buck. According to Mike, the front cockpit was an absolute slum. Gauges and switches had been chucked in, seemingly at random, with no thought for ergonomics or ease of use. Coupled with the complex aerodynamics of the Buccaneer at slow speed, this made the pilot's job in the circuit a complete nightmare. I think from a run and brake to touchdown, the pilot had to change hands on the stick about 8 times. For example, bleed air blown over the wings and tailplane was crucial to controllability at low speed. If one of them failed, the aircraft was uncontrollable. There were 3 gauges showing blow pressure for each wing and the tailplane. It was in its element at low level, fast, stable, and it turned pretty well, too. In the anti-shipping role, it was superior to the aircraft that replaced it. It has a better range, a higher ceiling, and internal weapons carriage. It could also carry twice as many Sea Eagle anti-shipping missiles and detect ships at greater ranges. 3. Grumman A-3 Intruder. Ugly and formidable, the A-3 Intruder was a lethal enforcer of U.S. foreign policy for over a third of a century. We spoke to bomber navigator Captain Andrew Comjam Niemeyer about his time on Grumman's Iron Tadpole, an impressively effective all-weather attack aircraft. What were the best and worst features of the aircraft? From a bomber navigator point of view, the overall radar, terrain avoidance, and TRAM, target recognition attack multi-sensor, FLIR/laser system absolutely rocked. Working together, along with the pilot's display, which was also part of the terrain avoidance and the bombing system, we really had a very robust capability. With the digital armament control unit, we could deliver huge varieties of dumb bombs and precision-guided munitions. The IMU, inertial nav system, working with the radar to generally identify a target, then rolling out the FLIR to confirm identifying the target, locking it up in the system, then lasing it to get absolute precision. The A-6 was amazingly effective, as its long combat history so amply proves. One of the best stories comes from the Vietnam War. A single intruder night mission did some truly precision bombing on the outskirts of Hanoi one night. No one else went downtown that night. Next day, Hanoi reported it had fought off a mass attack of B-52s. 2. A-3 Skywarrior. We asked former Captain Dirty Duck Niemeyer about the best and worst features of the A-3 Skywarrior. Its size and its size. The A-3 was huge, for it was designed for fulfilling a late 1940s requirement for a nuclear bomber with a roughly 2,000 nautical mile range at high altitude and very high sub-Mach 1 cruise speed. Ed Heinemann was incredibly proud that his design came in well under the 100,000 pounds, 45,455 kilograms, projected maximum gross weight, with performance numbers well ahead of its competition. Nonetheless, it had a demonstrated max catapult weight of 83,000 pounds, 37,727 kilograms, routinely kept to 73,000 pounds in actual use. It had a long, unrefueled, still air range in excess of 2,000 nautical miles, 3,704 kilometers. The Sky Warrior was over 74 feet long, 22.6 meters, and its long, high aspect ratio swept wings were over 72 feet, 21.9 meters wide, which meant line up at the boat was everything. Don't be drifting or lining up to the right. Do you see why it almost immediately got the fleet nickname of the Whale? That size meant that she rapidly became a jack of all trades, nuke and conventional bomber and mine layer, the last two of which they did during Vietnam, reconnaissance, trainer, VIP transport, tanker jammer, tanker, electronic warfare aggressor, developmental testbed, all these and more made the Whale a unique and valued platform. 1. Grumman Fighter F-14 Tomcat. When I asked former Tomcat radar intercept officer, a role that would be described as navigator in the UK, Dave Bio about what was best about the F-14, he noted it had a great weapon system. Go back to the F-14's introduction into Navy service and first deployment in 1974. It had long-range, multi-shot, look-down, shoot-down capability. I think the next American fighter to have all of this came along 17 years later when the AIM-120 became operational on other Teen Series fighters. I'll add another item as the second best thing, endurance. I'm going to throw the engines under the bus, so I might as well give them a little due credit. At throttle settings for maximum endurance, the total fuel flow was around 4,400 pounds, 2,000 kilograms per hour. Of course, this would require a permissive environment, but even bumping up the speed to increase survivability still gave decent time on the station. With the relatively large fuel capacity, this gave a healthy on-station time while maintaining a combat package. But light the burners and follow an acceleration and climb profile, and you could meet a high, fast flyer or be at tactical airspeed in a minute or so.